Dr. Drew, every weeknight 9 Eastern on HLN.
Last week, Douglas Kennedy, the youngest son of Robert F. Kennedy, was charged with harassment and child endangerment when he tried to take his 3-day-old baby out of the hospital for, quote, some fresh air. And that was without getting consent from staff or doctors. When 2 nurses then intervened, he allegedly grabbed one of the nurses by the wrist and kicked the other to the ground. You're seeing pictures of her going to the ground there alongside of me. I want to read you a statement from Douglas Kennedy and his wife. It reads, "It's sickening to think that our simple desire to take our son outside for fresh air has been warped into a charge of child endangerment. The nurse had no right to attempt to grab our child out of his father's arms." And today, Northern Westchester Hospital released its own statement saying, quote, "We completely support the actions of our nursing staff in this case as they were clearly acted out of concern for the safety of a newborn baby." The moral of the story here is you don't act out against the structure and rules of a hospital. Normal people don't do that. That's just how it works. They're in there. But let's play devil's advocate for a second, and maybe it is a father, you know, like you were saying, you were sympathetic towards
to it. Well, because I can remember having just given birth to my daughter, and this was 22 years ago now, but I remember it like it was yesterday, and they wouldn't give her to me when she was crying on the other side of a glass. And, you know, if I had snapped and yelled and pushed and shoved through to get my daughter, I mean, that could have been me.
You would have seen the security force.
And it's not cool.
And by the way, Lisa, I'm making note about this. I'm making note that this could be you, just so you know.
And my children, right? And he's a new daddy. I mean, it's the same kind of situation. So
yes.
Physical assault, never okay, but I can understand probably where he was coming from.
And Mark, let's continue to play this sort of devil's advocacy and say, you know, pediatric hospitals through history did horrible things to their patients. And if patients had spoken up earlier, maybe these kinds of weaknesses in our system would have been exposed. Now, I'm not saying what he did is okay, but maybe he's onto something.
There is a lot to mitigate this case. Not to negate his guilt. If he really did, you know, Bruce Lee, one of these nurses with a sidekick, and twist one of the wrists of the nurse, it doesn't matter if he was legally justified in taking the child. You cannot, under any criminal code, act in that manner. But let's look at the mitigation. There is plenty. I don't know if he got much sleep. I don't know what his condition was. But clearly there's a lot to mitigate, and I wouldn't like to see him have a tarnished record as a result.
Maybe we are making too much of...
Well, let's see him apologize then, right?
Yes. Mark, what about that? What about an apology? Because, listen, the hospital is just trying to... That poor hospital staff is just trying to do their damn job. It's hard enough to work in a hospital these days. It's hard enough to be a nurse. Let's give them a little support. Let him step up, apologize. I made a mistake. Hospitals operate that reason on the best interest of their patients.
A defense lawyer's not going to let somebody apologize.
Let's hear him.
Right, Mark?
Oh, ready? Are you ready, Lisa? Yes? Yes, you ready, Lisa? I would say diversion, so that he doesn't have to necessarily plead guilty, but as long as he writes a letter of apology, maybe a little anger management, assuming the facts are as we're hearing, then they drop the charge, he moves to have this expunged from his record, and we move on.